get
Well,
started, right? And I think
that's
people
good.
enjoy, the beginning. I think it's been great getting to know you and getting to know your company. Everybody, this is, Dr. Sumanth Swaminathan, and I hope I was within the ballpark with your name, even though we call him Swami. Doc and I met at crowdfunding week in Los Angeles last year, and he was one of the finalists for what they called a pitch contest, right? Which is taking your business and sharing it with the panel of judges, and I was the sponsor behind the contest and was one of the judges, one of the voices for the contest and stuff. And to be honest, Swami didn't have the most engaging pitch out of all of the pitch, and he did not win the pitch contest. He didn't make the finals, the final three or the final four, right? And I say that because his product was so good, is it really pushed him into the finals of the contest. And I think me and the judges looked at each other and we were talking, and then one of the things we said is like, this is a product that's gonna succeed. What they have is gonna be a great success, right? And so, I share that, and then as we talk about his product today and those kind of things on our podcast, I can't wait for him to share some of the things, but I also can't wait for those of you listening to kind of dive down the journey of what it's like, being a doctor, what it's like having an idea, right? And how you bring that, like, how do you even begin the journey, right? Because you work in one of the biggest industries, one of the hardest to enter industries. It's not like you can just enter the healthcare and become an insurance company, right? For us in the real estate industry, we wanted to own a title company, and the amount of lawyers and the amount of interviews and getting through the insurance regulators and everything else was just, it's a continuous, never-ending journey. So tell me about, healthcare. I think would probably even be harder. So tell me about the journey.
I love to. And just before I start on that, let me just first say, Dutch, thank you for having me here. Thank you to your team for the courtesy and professionalism they put together in inviting me here and preparing this program. And of course, it was tremendous to meet you at Equity Crowdfunding Week. And our success there in the pitch competition gave us certainly a boost as we closed out our fundraising seed round last year, which turned out to be quite a success. And we're really thrilled to be here, and thank you for also displaying the belief that you've had in our product and in our mission. And you're right. You asked about what was our journey? How did we start? And healthcare in the United States is a daunting system. It's the most expensive in the world by far per capita. And of course, the health outcomes in the United States are not very strong by compared to most industrialized nations. And Vironix is a team of deep scientists and clinicians primarily, and at the forefront of the founding team. And so, to be honest, Vironix was started by a group of people who have been working on different aspects of chronic disease management for now decades. I'm actually a theoretician. I did my PhD in mathematics, mostly theoretical physics. I was doing industrial mathematics for most of my early career. I got into the digital health space now about 7 years back. And that was through a startup, actually. I've been in the startup space now close to 7 years. And during my time in these various health tech startups, I was shadowing physicians, meeting patients, learning everything about lung and heart disease degeneration, publishing papers, building AI tech products. And so I met this huge array of people, young people, older folks, physicians, tech wonks, healthcare entrepreneurs. And often, as is the case, when you're trying to solve very difficult problems and you're meeting these extraordinary people, this sometimes proves to be a great way or a great seed to start your own company. Because the problems in healthcare are vast and they seemingly never seem to shorten. And as you learn more about these subjects and you get more personally engaged with the challenges that people have, you have your own ideas, right? And you want to do this and you want to make a contribution. But as you point out, healthcare is big and it's challenging, and you need a team. You need to understand the regulatory climate. You need to understand data privacy, patient care. In general, healthcare is a field where it takes quite a bit of startup capital to get going. Okay, we're not a direct-to-consumer retail company. We're not selling shirts where some of the, or even general consumer products that don't require a lot of vetting before pushing out to individual patients. So, one of the tricky things with healthcare is because of the stakes and because of what you're trying to do in improving patient health, the startup is, starting a company is quite challenging from a financial perspective. Getting the right expertise, the deep expertise to actually build products that are different and meaningful is challenging. And then, of course, getting your products used and adopted in a system that will put lots of things, rightfully so, will put a lot of barriers in your way for you to get your products out. What are those barriers? You need to show that it actually works. I mean, it's hard. It's incumbent upon us not to kill somebody, right? And it's incumbent upon us to actually improve health if we're going to say we're going to improve health and show that in clinical studies and testing. And so now that I've said that it's very difficult and challenging to get into healthcare, it is also the most profoundly important thing I've done in my life, as far as I'm concerned. It's the most important aspect of my professional career. It's something that's very deep in my soul. It's something I'm passionate about, and all of my co-founders and colleagues are passionate about as well.
Well, Swami, I don't know if you know this about me, right? I'm pretty deep into, natural path, right? Pretty much deep into homeopathy, right? Pretty deep into like natural, chemical balancing, emotional support, like Bach remedies and different kinds of things. And so I find it fascinating that I was so attracted to what you do because typically I'm a little, anti healthcare and a little anti some of those kind of things. But, I think one of the most important things in the world is diagnosis, right? And the ability to recognize in yourself and recognize in yourself as a person. My guys who are actually interesting because they're from, two of my marketing guys that are here on the team are actually from the healthcare industry before they joined their company. So our topic's kind of probably fascinating to them, but they're signaling to me, I just need to make sure I do the common disclosures real quick. So those of you that are listening, right, Dr. Swami has not compensated us in any way, right, for us to share his information. We have made an investment at Rad Diversified in our Rad companies into Dr. Swami's company, and we're probably going to continue to invest in it because we believe in it. And he's not compensating us, and we're not compensating him anyway. There's a exchange of belief, right? That we have. And so for me, my exchange of belief is I think diagnosis and early diagnosis is the single most important thing to any health path.
Absolutely.
And so for me, that's where I was very attracted to what he's doing. Now, his company, right, Vironix, sounds like we might be talking about viruses, right? Especially in a post-COVID world, and that's not what we're talking about. So why don't you kind of give them a 411 on exactly what how your product works, right, and how it diagnoses, right? And a lot of our people are investors, and they're looking at investments, but I'm sure some of them are absolutely in the need too, right? For preventative and for advanced notification and advanced warning when they're having health issues. So fire away, brother.
Yeah, and your interest also, Dutch, in homeopathy and some of these wellness tools, it fits right in the theme of preventative care, which is what we do. We build AI preventative healthcare technology. The vast majority of spending and death in the healthcare system is consumed when people are already sick. They're well past the tipping point, and we're spending a lot of money almost making death tolerable. Whereas all the action is really in identifying illness, particularly severe illness, in its early stages. And if you get it in its early stages, it's not magic. We're not predicting that you're going to get cancer 15 years from now. This is not what we do. We build very sophisticated API technology that interprets health information of people at home. As an example, let's say you're a heart failure patient. You may have fluid accumulating in different parts of your body as you progress in your illness. It's a common feature of congestive heart failure. You may have shortness of breath at times.
Right,
you may be eating.
Hold on. So I got a way to give this explanation to people. Like it just fired in my brain. So have you ever watched the show Billions?
I have not. I probably should though,
So
huh?
so it's a TV show where they're in raising capital, right? And they're investing into different businesses. Now, this isn't the use of your product, but so they gave every one of their uh, team, right, a ring, right? And the ring was
Yep.
doing health monitoring on them. And in the show, one of them had a heart attack while having sex, but that's not necessarily, the point. But he has having a heart attack, and so like but they didn't tell them they were monitoring their health. And so the two guys at the top are trying to debate, like for half a second. They're like, well, what do we do? Do we just let him have a heart attack? Do we not let him have a heart attack? And so obviously they called the ambulance, and so he's doing his thing, right? And then suddenly the EMT shows up at his door, and they're like, you're in the middle of having a heart attack, and he's like, yeah, I think
Jesus.
maybe I am, right? And because
It's
lots of times
terrifying,
people don't,
right?
we're so numb as people, we don't actually know what's going on with ourselves physically. So I'm gonna get my guys to find that clip, and we'll have it cut in the description for this, just as a fun side note. But go ahead, keep going, Doc. So
Well, Dutch, imagine that example, right? But imagine I told you that, let's say, an hour before that guy had his heart attack, that there's things going down.
even better.
Okay, there's oxygen in his blood, and it's supposed to be at saturation between 98 and 100%, and it's slowly diminishing. And why? Because air is not getting through, dissolved in the blood and circulating properly. It could be due to a number of things, by the way, in your body. Now, if I told you that I could track their oxygen saturation and the rate of their heart rate, and even their lung function with spirometers in real time. And then I also told you I could figure out just by asking that person, are you feeling a little more short of breath than usual? Are you using your diuretics or your inhalers more than usual? Okay. Maybe I also knew that there's a little more pollution in the room because there's public APIs that tell you what the particulate air content is. Okay. Now, the truth is, a lot of this data that I'm talking about can be modeled in real time with a mix of traditional mathematics and AI, and it can be used to risk stratify this guy so
So if
that
people are like,
instead of waiting, yeah,
sorry, if people are like
go ahead.
living in a place where there's mold, right? And I just say
Yep.
this because I've seen it actually even in my own house. We just replaced our duct work, and I think it's our condenser, right, with our AC, because it was completely covered in mold, and we finally we saw it in one of the vents, and I'm like, I had the guys come in and replace it and stuff. But I actually have 2 or 3 employees in the last 6 months that have had major health issues, and they uncovered there was some pretty serious mold stuff in their living situation, right? So is that
Yeah.
something you would designate, you would like see in their blood or their oxygen?
Well, actually, so if you look at your air report, in fact, you can actually just go on your Apple phone and scroll over to the left on most of your weather reports. It says the concentration of allergens in the air in your zip code. Now, it may not be as refined as getting it down to, let's say, a few feet away from you, but the mold content in air is actually tracked
Mm-hmm.
along with things like the amount of oak in the air, which is a big thing in Austin, particulate matter of different sizes.
What is
And so
oak? What
particularly
is
for an
oak in the
asthmatic,
what does oak in the air do?
it's just another allergen.
Oh,
So if
okay.
you look
Yeah.
at
So just
things that cause different triggers in people, like some people have no problem with mold, but they have problem with other things, right? Pollen in particular. And so for someone like with a reactive airway illness like asthma, maybe a lot of things don't matter, like they don't have fluid accumulation or cholesterol or sodium problems, but if there's some pollen in the air, it's going to cause them to go crazy, right? And so the key is to understanding that there's actually a lot of data that's available to people at home, tons of data. And with the right technology, you can interpret that data in real time and help people to get ahead of devastating illness. And devastating illness is the kind of thing where somebody could have just taken a puff of their inhaler or taken a little bit of their diuretic at a heart failure patient if they caught the onset of illness, let's say on day 1 or day 2. Problem is when they catch it on day 8, day 9, day 10, they're in the
it's too
hospital
late.
at 10 grand a night or they're dead, right? And the key to getting this right is getting tech in home that can help you to interpret as much of this as possible at the right moment in time. Okay. Now, look, the cornerstones of actually great health are sleep, nutrition, and exercise. Okay. So some of the things you were talking about before, just for basic wellness and living a long and happy life, you can do these things by, with some of the things you were talking about and some of the things that you're into, by maintaining good behavior, etc. But the truth is, we spend so much money in this country, 4.3 trillion, about half of which is just spent on hospitalization and direct medical care. $2 trillion. I mean, there's only a handful of countries in the world who have a GDP that's higher than $2 trillion, and that's what we spend, basically just effectively getting people in and out of
But
hospitals.
what I like about your product is it's not like the people that are sitting here listening to this podcast, right? They're not going to go to CVS and buy your product, and they're not like, it's not so much like, as from an investor standpoint, right? I'm not counting on you to do direct distribution to consumer, right? And
That's right.
and trying to convince the consumer to utilize a preventative product, right? Because Americans, we are, if nothing else, not wanting to admit that we're sick, right?
Right.
And we are sick, right? We're as a nation, there's an obesity, right? I think more people have, asthmatic and lung problems from the COVID times than we've ever seen before, right? But we're also healthy at the same time, and so like there's also a bit of ego, right, to us as a people, in the sense that we don't like to admit that we're sick either, right? Especially stuff
Sure.
that's not causing immediate pain. And so, but what I like is where your product is naturally prescribed, and it's naturally handed out through the medical professionals, and so your distribution is through the medical clinics and through the different sources there. So tell people a little bit about that, because I think that's a far smarter and more effective way to distribute, right, your product, and the fact that doctors and clinics and others accept your product, and it's covered, right, in a lot of ways by a lot of healthcare, and so that you're not coming out of pocket, and so it's really kind of a win-win situation for the consumers. But as investors, I look at everything as reality, right? Is this a real product? Does it make money? Right? Is there an actual profit plan? Is there a scalability? Is there an upswing? Is there a potential home run? Right? What's worst
Hmm.
case scenario? Those are things that I'm constantly looking at. So tell people a little bit about your distribution model.
Yeah, the go-to-market, there's essentially two paths, but the key, as you pointed out, is that it's paid for and all the players in the system win. So we go to physicians and we say, look, you have a lot of sick patients. Okay. We don't need you to spend any extra effort, money, or staff. Just tell us who these patients are, and we're going to get them set up with our system. We're going to buy oximeters, BP cuffs, you name it, for them. It doesn't cost the practice any money.
To
We're
be
going to set
clear,
them
for
up
the
with our.
people that are haters out there, he's not crossing any HIPAA laws, right? It is be
That's
permission
right.
based, right? Just because they're out there, doc. So I like to address them, but keep going, brother.
Yeah, very important. We're obviously HIPAA secure
Of
platform,
course,
but there's
absolutely.
also Medicare sign-offs. This is, but so we then set them up with our AI software that helps them to track and interpret their data. And then we even have managed care staff on our side that helps the patients to stay compliant. Now, everything I just described is actually paid for through health insurance. Medicare, Medicaid, and a variety of private insurers are paying several hundreds of dollars per patient per month through established CPT codes to physicians to get patients set up with these kinds of technologies. And why? Because it's a lot better to pay three, four, five, $600 per patient per month than it is to pay 10, 15, 20 grand per patient per month. Okay. And that's what it costs when patients end up in the hospital. So for insurance to spend a few $100s per patient per month to set up preventative care tech that keeps them out of the hospital is a drop in the bucket. And it's a done deal. These codes are already out there, and physicians can bill against these codes right now. There's nothing new to do. Now, physicians, what do they get out of it? Well, they get improved patient care, but they're also generating considerable new revenue for moderate patients who perhaps weren't generating revenue before. And for the patients in what are called value-based care contracts, right now more than ever, uh, physicians are in contracts with insurers that say if they lower costs for their patients, they'll actually get a piece of the cost saving. And that can be huge, by the way. It can be many millions of dollars.
Now,
And because we've
do you
shown,
think
yeah.
like big pharma and healthcare really want to reduce cost? That's a little bit of a political question, but I don't know that they do.
Yeah, look, this is a great question. So why would a health insurer ever want to reduce costs. Well, what a health insurer would want to do is they don't want to pay large bills
I guess the
for
insurance
your
company want to pay it.
hospitalization.
Insurance companies want to pay out less money, right? So I guess your
That's
anti
right.
would be pharmaceutical, or your anti would be the actual hospitals themselves might be a little bit against it if that's causing less patients. They would never admit it. I don't know. What are your
That's true.
thoughts on that?
But that's true. If it was costing them money, they wouldn't admit it, even if it was helping care. But remember, in this case, the mix of the value-based contracts and the billable revenue is increasing their upside. Right now, hospitals in particular, they're suffering staff shortages and problems, safety issues, particularly from COVID, but also revenue losses because a lot of elective surgeries and other processes that were paying the bills in the past have shortened, particularly with fears about an infection level in clinics. So actually getting stable billable revenue through remote monitoring, particularly for patients who are not bringing in any revenue before, is helping them. And then on the patient side, of course, they're getting free tech and they're getting better health outcomes. It doesn't cost them anything. Now, on the pharma side, you asked about that. Remember, the pharma side, they want their therapies to continue to help people. There's nothing happening with that. Okay, you still part of making sure that some of these chronic disease patients stay out of the hospital is in fact improving their medication adherence, making sure they're taking their controller medications when they're supposed to or early so that they don't end up in the hospital. So you see, I mean, actually, all the players in their system are benefiting from this approach. Now, there's a philosophical question long term, right? Which is in 10, 20, 30 years, if everybody is healthier and they're not going to the hospital, how does this benefit those players? And presumably, actually, that could be the case. If people are healthier, health insurance should eventually, lose because their premium should go down. It's almost like the reason why
They'll never go down.
real estate yeah, but historically, what you've seen, certainly as long as we've been alive, has been that this trend hasn't been broken, and a lot of big insurance has been quick to adapt to new sources of revenue. That's where value-based care came from in the first place. So, look, it is a rare opportunity, I can say, where if you look at the major players, health insurance, lowering hospitalization, but charging the same premium. They make money. Physicians getting new stable revenue for patients they weren't getting any for before, getting new bonuses from value-based care checks, but also improving safety and lowering infection. Patients getting better health outcomes, getting free tech. This climate where all the stakeholders win didn't exist even as recently as a couple of years back. COVID really pushed this to the forefront. It implanted a culture of telehealth that's been skyrocketing. By the way, so remote patient monitoring and remote therapeutic monitoring, the industry that we're in, is growing at a rate of anywhere from 30 to 50% a year, depending on the study that you read, which is massive, by the way.
Let's dive in real quick, just because I know you're talking revenue, you're talking money, right? So let's dive into the actual money model, right? What is your cost of deliverable? What is it that you make from the situation? Like, what's the revenue model for your company, and what do doctors make, or what are the different parts? Like, how does the money flush out?
Yep. So to get a patient set up, generally it's the cost of a single device to get a patient set up, an oximeter, BP cup, that can be $75 to $100.
Who pays that?
Plus the effort it takes. Vironix pays that.
Okay.
Now, and why does Vironix pay that? Well, so actually, let me continue the story, and then it'll be clear.
Go ahead.
So to initiate the patient, that'll cost some time of our managed care staff, about $50. And then we have our cloud software. Because we're an API company and we've built cloud tech, it's super cheap. It scales really well. So basically, the acquisition cost of a patient is anywhere from $150 to $200. Okay. Now, on the reimbursement codes, on 1 month of activity, the physician billing Medicare has already made all that money back. So when we go to physicians, we take essentially all of the first month's billing, so that basically our costs are covered within a month. And then every month of billing after that, which can be anywhere from $100 to really up to $500 per patient per month, depending on, there's almost 9 chronic care management, therapeutic monitoring, and remote patient monitoring codes that the physician can potentially bill against, depending on the service that's done, right? All of that is just profit. And so the physicians they're often taking anywhere from 50 to 80% of the billable codes after the first month.
Okay.
Because after the first month, our costs are covered. And that generates a nice revenue for Vironix. You're talking about, $100 to $200 per patient per month, depending on the extent of services we've delivered. And just so you understand, 100 to 200.
It's a reoccurring number. So is that number could go a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, forever?
That's right.
And then the crazy insane, the crazy
Yeah.
insane part about that is if you guys don't understand revenue models, if you don't understand how they work, is it means you can put a lot of money, a lot of capital in the per patient acquisition, right? And so you can create what's, it's a loss leader model. You can create, I know that's not the healthcare industry terminology, right? But you can create a model where you can really spend the money to acquire customers, right? And which creates what's, called a burn rate, or creates a gap between, what you're making and to cover costs, and what you're making to cover overhead, and what you're investing to build up your billables, right? And build up your monthly recurring income. And so if you can monitor those finances, right? It's like a waterfall, right? And as it goes, the waterfall, the mountain actually just keeps getting higher and higher, and the water keeps falling more and more, right? And so it's interesting model, because it goes, from one ledge to the next ledge, and then there's, obviously the viral, right? To say it jokingly, right? Growth at that point, right? But the insane rapid growth. So it's fascinating when you look at models like that. And when I'm looking at businesses, lots of times that's what I'm looking for, right? I'm looking at revenue models. I'm looking at the management. I'm looking at who's in charge and who's operating and running it, right? Now, in your DNA, when you went from, the beginning to Vironix, what was the gap? What was the leap? What was that origin? Like, what's your, X-Men, right, origin story?
Yeah, well, when we started Vironix, that's a great reference. I'm a big fan of X-Men, by the way.
You and Dr. X, share a hairline, so
that's true. I'm glad I can still walk. But so actually, we started during COVID. We are a company of founders that had deep knowledge in chronic lung and heart disease, physicians, scientists, and then also our co-founder Sriram. He was the CTO of a company called Coney. It was sold for $560 million. And after that, he became an executive at Oracle. So he's like a guru on AI, like tech. So it had to scale mobile tech in a way that's cheap, stable, and also how to get consumers aboard, right? In healthcare, the elephant in the room is always adoption. That's the skepticism everybody has. Will a patient ever use this, right? So, but now in this climate, post-COVID, there's been this massive adoption of remote care. And so now if you can build some tech that requires almost no effort of the patient, slips right into the stuff they're already doing, and is free, then you've completed the puzzle of adoption.
Yeah.
But you need people with that kind of vision in your X-Men team, right? So if you look at the special powers, so to speak, of our X-Men team, you've got people like me who, first of all, I've actually taken products to market with a mix of success and failure in all of the major players: insurance, pharma, direct to physicians, and direct to consumer. And of course, I'm an AI guru. So that I have experience, and I have a lot of experience with the mathematics and modeling. But then we have Shri, another co-founder, who has commercialized and scaled and built API tech across platforms and across industries. And then you've got these physicians, Dr. Landon, Dr. Wysham, who understand everything about disease pathways, who understand patient care, who understand the problems physicians have or don't have with tech. And all the problems they have, what are their priorities? Like how the fee-for-service system works, and like how to sell physicians, how to get them on board. And then another big win for us is our investor base and our advisors. A lot of the people who invest in us are the quote smart capital. So lots of people who have succeeded in population health, in health insurance, who know everything about reimbursement pathways of health insurance. So just imagine you brought that team together, the superpowers in consumer and health insurance-based settings, the superpowers in disease propagation with our physicians, the superpowers in AI, mathematics, and the go-to-market and the four major players. and then the superpower in like the actual mobile tech, the
S-
software.
See, now it's kind of fun, and I understand a little bit about this origin story. I remember being 25 years old, right, and I first time in my life I'd ever had any money, I'd ever made any money, right, and I grew up really poor, and so I finally I was a headhunter, and I remember I made a $48,000 in one check, right, and I don't know if I'd ever made more than like $30,000 in a year before, right. And I remember I'm trying to figure out what to invest in. So I attended a commercial real estate seminar, right? And so, but at that point I didn't have the ability to hold it together, right? And so I went and got these two private, banking client services individuals to help me raise money. And I went and found the director of urban planning and development at UC Irvine. And then I found a loan administrator, right, at Union Bank, because I was a headhunter in commercial banking and commercial real estate. So I had some resources and connections, and I pulled this whole team together and got them in a room, and they got all excited, right, about the idea of building something, in real estate together. But at that age, I wasn't ready, right? I wasn't ready to hold all of those pieces, all of those components together. And so, 6 months to a year later, as I worked at buying my first apartments, my first self storage stuff, like that team fell apart, right? And I look back at it though, as that origin story that you have, right, is being able to hold those different pieces together to get your capital people to raise capital, to get your passion and your mission. But I think where you're able to hold so many of those pieces together is you were coming from a place of experience and knowledge, right? Now, that first origin story I think was super healthy for me to get to where I am today, right? And an important part of gathering resources and collecting resources and putting those resources to work, which I think is part of the magic of what you're doing is you've gathered these important resources, both human resources, right? Model resources in your business model and your product, right? I think there's a lot of the components for kind of that perfect storm. But I love that part of the origin story, because I remember my attempt at that origin story and failing in my 20s, right? And that part of the journey. And so just kudos, because that takes a lot to be I always say it's like being a composer of an orchestra, right? And you have your different instruments, and you have your different music, and you have your different egos, and you have your different pieces, and you've got to be very good at maneuvering these pieces. But also, it sounds like you had worked with these guys, that you'd created friendships, that you were growing with. Is that kind of a central part of it, a shared belief system?
A shared belief system and some experience for sure. But actually, I mean, Dutch, and by the way, I love your early story, Dutch. Everything about your trajectory is a classic American dream. I was actually in two startups before this one.
Mm.
I wasn't in charge in the first one. I was hired as a chief data scientist. And so I learned a lot there about, actually, I learned certainly, first of all, how to be a lot more lean with the capital that you've got, and how to respect investor capital. By the
Well,
way, I
because
mean,
a
you
lot
don't
of
just
capital can be lazy, right? When you have too much money to grow
absolutely.
a business, it actually makes a lot of bad red tape. It makes a lot of bad, like, over processing, right? Where people try to create so many processes. You have a process for the process of the process to do the process, right? But
Right.
I always say there's the it, right? Every day in business. And for you, you got to know what the it is. But when you have too much money and too much capital, it's a lot easier to lose the it, unless you have experience and you've been through it before, and you've understood that part. So that's pretty cool. So your first
That's right.
startup, you were the data analyst, right? And they had too
Yeah,
much running. You ran
that's right.
lean. But what about the second one?
Well, the second one, it was basically an offshoot of the first one. There
Okay.
was an SBIR grant that was one, and so the first one, it was basically
What's an
split into
SBIR
pieces
grant?
and sold. SBIR, sorry, is a Small Business Innovation Research Grant. So
Okay.
it's actually only given, they're very competitive, but the NSF, the NIH, they just give non-dilutive capital to certain proposals from people that represent truly cutting edge technology that has the potential to transform mankind. And because a lot of these technologies can be high risk, they're not easy to get investment capital from people who want a quick rate of return. So the NSF made the seed fund that will fund these sorts of technology
Well, because
efforts.
research takes time, right? And
Research takes time. Yeah,
and that's the thing
it takes. Yeah,
you don't want to get caught in, though, is like if you're trying to be an entrepreneur and start a business, is caught up in not putting a product to market, right? And so like it's a unique you got to find a balance with it for sure. Tell me about your
that's
balance
right.
with it for sure,
That's right.
because I know you guys had deep research before you even thought of Vironix.
Yeah, and so that's the thing. I mean, because there was no Vironix was actually started during COVID. We thought we could leverage all these capabilities we had over the last 30 years to provide a service for COVID. Everybody was terrified about COVID. We knew how to build technology for other diseases, and we thought, can we get early detection capabilities for COVID in place? But there was no data on COVID during COVID, and there was no existing models that would work for COVID. So we had to build all this new technology. And but when you've had 6 years or 7 years of being in startups, seeing mistakes, having done research, published papers, and for me, in my case, it goes much farther back than the startups in understanding mathematics and AI capabilities and techniques. When you have that capability and you've spent some time understanding this industry and you've built up all these colleagues, at that moment, it was much easier for me to assemble a team, understand how to manage capital, understand what was fair of me to ask investors for, and what was not fair for me to ask investors for, right? So, I took a couple $100,000 of pre-seed capital in our first year, and we built our MVP, we built early go-to-market partners, we built our tech. We couldn't do all the validation we needed on that tech, so we raised another 300K, and we did more product building, more validation on that tech. And then we established commercial customer MOUs for fairly large hospitals and clinics who wanted to use our product. Again, heavily leveraging our network. We have a massive network of people connected to all the people who are connected to our founding team. Now there's 230 investors in Vironix, a little more than that, who've invested close to $1.7 million. And all of those folks are mostly smart capital, meaning they're in the industry. So they have friends, right? And so what you've done is you've built a community of people who believe in what you do, and you need to keep, what they say, it takes a village to raise, but I would argue it takes, if you have a village, you have all these people who've taken a deep look at you, who have done diligence on you, who have seen your products, your research, the people who are around you, and they're convinced. So now they want to help, right? They want to be a part of this journey. And this journey, more than anything else, I'm telling you, like Dutch, this is such an important journey. People get it right away. Just the amount of suffering that can be alleviated with good preventative care tech, the business opportunity for people who want to get well, but at the same time, have a great cause behind it.
I feel like this is where I have to cut in with like the PSA, like Vironix, you guys is a company you can invest in that's only open to rad investors, right? Through the end of the month, right? And so that's right. Literally like the next 10, 12, 13 days. And we're not being compensated for that. But with our 6,000 plus investors, and I know we'll hit 10,000 investors this year, right? I think what I've sought to do is to get you guys some exclusive access. Right now, we say all investing is, especially angel and VC investing, is high risk, right? And so I put that disclosure out there. But I think what you look at are companies with real revenue, with a real model, and you want to put some money to work. And I think their lowest cost to entry is $250, right? Am I wrong or right about that?
Well, the Reg CF campaign is closed now, so the Reg D is out there.
So what is your minimum capital investment?
The minimum cap investment is $10,000 into Reg D. Yeah. And this is available, as you mentioned.
That in the sense that, like, I think, with our investors, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
10,000 capital is definitely, something that I feel like, I know some of our investors will do. And so we'll put the link up there for you guys to do that, right? And I do those disclosures. Like, I'm not a financial advisor, right? I'm a real estate investor who also invests in businesses. I'd have to say I'm a business investor at this point as well. And I think, this is a great window for those of you who want to jump in. What I would say to Swami, and I said this to him before, right, is it always takes more capital than you think it's going to take, right, to grow a rapid growth business, to really expand your business. Like for us, we had 2 capital raises going all the time. We had our capital raising going on behind the scenes with our management companies. And then we actually had our REIT investment capital, which we keep completely separate, right, at all times to make investments. And I would say the money, for rapid growth as we went through that phase, from 2021 deep into 2022, before we started slowing down our hiring and our staffing and stuff, right, was insane. And it did take more money than I thought it was going to. And I'm just glad that experience tells you that, right? And that part of it. And you're really, product to market at this point. And that's the important kind of next phase I think you shared with me in 2023 is it's all about distribution and product to market this year, right?
That's right. It's all about revenue and platform enrollment of patients and users. We also have this huge go-to-market angle that I didn't discuss too much, but our cloud APIs, these algorithms that interpret data in real time, they can be put under wearables, they can be put in insurance company apps, they can be used in corporate wellness. So one of our other go-to-market strategies is to go to companies, employers, and say, hey, look, you already have apps or wearables that you're giving to your employees. Just put our AI underneath what you're already doing and pay us a subscription. And so we have a huge go-to-market push on our remote patient monitoring product that we talked about on this, as well as our API product. And this year is all about platform growth, revenue generation.
So what's an investor's exit with you, right? Is it you do an IPO and at that point in time they go ahead and they get big dividends for their stock, or tell me how that would work?
Yeah, so acquisition and IPO are both potential exits. Given that we have some really large partners.
Is acquisition just as likely or more likely than IPO?
If I were to be a guessing man, and CEOs never like to be speculating too much, okay, at this stage. But what I would say is, given our go-to-market through some fairly mature partners, acquisition is probably a bit more likely than IPO. Yeah. Now, having said all of that, because we have a global product, this thing has been validated and scaled in a way that...
Well, it's much more common in European countries to do preventative, right?
Yeah, and in fact, Germany, England, they have a more mature digital health ecosystem than the United States does. Mm-hmm. So the addressable market in the United States for remote patient monitoring is about 55 billion and growing. Mm-hmm. That's in the United States alone. Okay, so the global market is massive. And because we can scale across diseases too, this is a company whose product portfolio could very easily IPO. And yes, the returns, if you look at companies like Hinge Health in the musculoskeletal space, I think they're about a $6 billion valuation right now. But other digital health companies, Omada, WellDoc, a Killian Pair on the prescribed digital therapeutic space. But obviously, these companies made massive returns for their investors. You
spoke just a foreign language to me. I felt like I was sitting in a Latin class.
Apologies for that.
No, it's all right. I think I'll throw some of those names into the descriptor, so if people want to do some research, they can. My team, when they do the editing, they'll kind of grab some of that stuff, right? I think it'll be helpful for people. So I just want to, restate it, right? That Vironix is a company you can invest in. We're going to get this out as quick as we can because it's open to our investors. I really, I don't know if the word begged is the right word, but I really appreciated Dr. Swami into opening it up to our investors to give them some exclusive access, at this point to get their investment, and be able to grab a piece of this company. So I think that's awesome. And I appreciate that. We're going to put the link if you guys, want to take that action. I'll repeat that we're not compensated in any way. In this, it's a company we've invested in. They won a pitch contest that we were the sponsor of, and in communication with the judges. And forgive me, they didn't win, but they did a strong showing, right?
That's right. In the top, we are in the top three. But
we were in the top three.
I have to say that
hey,
the gentleman who won did a fantastic pitch. So kudos to him.
I spent a decade of my life creating the best. I spent a decade of my life, I think, creating the best product I could in our space, right? The aggressive investment real estate product that I think I could. And I think a better product is more important than the best pitches in the world, even though sometimes the best pitchmen in the world win stuff, right? So a great product from everything that we did our research on and we did our due diligence on. So we're not financial advisors. I'm just telling you from my own opinion as an investor. I'm sharing with you guys. Click the links. Swami, anything else you want to share before we wrap?
Well, I just want to first just say thank you so much again for having us here, and for sharing in your belief in our mission and the importance of our products. And what I would just leave your investors with is that right now this is a company with a very important healthcare mission, a massive market, early customer traction that is highly scalable, heavy differentiation in our tech and product space, and of course, the best and the smartest people in the world managing the company. And when you take the intersection of those five things, it really does lead to a really promising path. And we'd love to have you folks aboard. But just to reiterate what Dutch said earlier, the round is closed to anybody outside of RAD's network. Dutch approached us before our round closed, and on the basis of those conversations, we made sure to reserve this, but it's truly exclusive and only to the network that Dutch has brought here through Rad Diversified.
I appreciate
And
you,
the last
brother.
thing I just
Go ahead, keep going.
yeah, and the last final thing I just want to say to you, Dutch, I love the success of your company. I'm looking forward to speaking with you more in the coming weeks. And there's of course a lot of folks who believe in your investment product with our network. I myself have invested in a variety of real estate vehicles in the past. And I'm just so happy to have met you, to be within your ecosystem. Congratulations on all the success that you've had, and particularly in the last few years, the growth you've had is just remarkable. So we appreciate you, and we thank you for letting us contribute here.
Awesome, brother. Well, this is the mastermind, right? These are the nuggets. I think I take great knowledge from this myself, and I think that's what we always seek, right? During these things, to be able to share about some amazing companies and be able to share some of these thoughts. And you start to, it's just like anything, right? I watched, Joe Rogan's podcast, and comedians start to find a silver lining. They start to find a certain way between success and failure, and non-success and failure. And I figure the more successful, smart individuals like you I talk to, the more I figure out that silver lining, the more I figure out that path, right? And that journey behind our own models and the things we do. So thanks a lot, brother. And we're a wrap.
Thank you, my man. Take care, be well, and thanks to all your listeners.
Cool. As we go back, Swami, with the editing, right? Apologize for butchering Vironix name more than once. But I think if there's anything there that you feel you want edited, do we think that editing the 250, when I said the 250, because that's what I had in my notes, do we think editing the 250 is a smart pull out, or do we just leave it in because I think it's kind of natural, and I don't think it hurts? I don't know. What are your thoughts, you guys?
I didn't really think it hurts because it signifies that the Reg CF is over and that there's limited time.
Okay.
My guys, if you feel the same way.
My guys agree too. So in the background here, so part of my marketing team and stuff. So they're pretty aware of pitches and different things. So yeah, but it felt unpitchy. I felt like we shared it in a great way. I'm excited to see how our tribe does with it. I think they'll do really well with it. We got to do a quick turnaround, right, because of timing and stuff. But I think we'll do that pretty quick. Hey, are you able to make it to Florida? I know it's last minute and it's crazy ask, but would you be able to make it to Florida in the first week of February? So we have our inner circle, and they pay $50,000 to join the club, right? Just to be a member. It's not even an investment, just to be a member of the club. And we'll usually have about 120 inner circle members at our retreat in Florida. And I didn't know if you'd be able to make it at all, but I feel like, one of the things I'm exposing my inner circle to for the first time is non-real estate related investments, right? And so I don't know if you'd be able to make it to that or not. Maybe kind of let me know.
I'm in Dubai from the 28th till February 3rd.
Okay.
Is this the week of February 6th you're talking about?
Yeah, actually it is. I think it's
Is it the full week?
No, it's 3 days. It's 3 days, and you could be there any of the 3 days. You don't need to be there the whole time, even though we have a lot of fun. Like we go and, we do all kinds of fun things, whether it's, outdoor experiences or Top Golf or shooting guns or whatever. We go as a group, right? Just fun stuff, right? So it is, I'm just pulling dates real quick. February. It is the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, actually. So
Okay.
if the 4th or 5th, you wanted to come through, where do you fly back into from Dubai? Do you fly back into New York, or you fly back into California, or how does that? I'm trying to think. Remember myself.
Into Austin. I
Into
believe
Austin.
connects in Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to
I mean, I would
Austin.
totally get if that's too much travel too. I just, I think it's a window. We only do them twice a year, right? With our inner circle club, but we record them, and then there's about 400 total members, but we'll usually have about 100 to 120 attend. So
I'm marking this weekend now. Do you think people will leave early on Sunday, or is Sunday a full day of events also?
they kind of well, what we do Sunday is we actually go on property tours in the afternoon, and so most of the time, like if we were gonna share, if I was gonna interview you or share you with the tribe, it would be probably before noon on Sunday, would be my guess.
Okay. All right. So if there's a window, I'd probably have to come in Saturday afternoon, and then return on Sunday evening. So let me just let me run this by my
no pressure.
by my wife, and also just check what's possible. But I put this on my calendar, and I'll get back to you ASAP for sure.
I mean, if you're in Dubai, right, and are you with the family in Dubai?
I'm at Arab Health, the conference.
Oh, okay.
So.
Right.
So
your wife might say you
talk
just
there.
went to Dubai. You can't leave for at least 24 hours. So, but either way, I understand. So just let me know.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I go to Dubai on the 28th, so I
Yeah.
return on February 3rd. I'll have been there for 7 days, so I'll be jet lagged, and of course, all that other such stuff, and I'll have been away from family for a while. But it's not. I mean, if we're just talking about flying in on Saturday and coming back in on Sunday, it may be doable. So let me just check what's possible. Okay.
All right, brother. We'll talk soon.
Hey, I really appreciate it, man, and hopefully I wasn't too long-winded. Hopefully this resonates.
No, you're doing
with
good. You're doing good. I didn't feel like I had to jump in that often, right? So, it's when you're trying to share your company, you're trying to share what you're doing. There's so many microscripts we have running through our heads, and so many stories, that we have built in, right? It's easy to just go on them. I do the same thing. I literally was doing a book thing. I'm working with a promoter who's got a bunch of bestsellers, right? And like they're interviewing me for the ghostwriting and stuff, and like the guy literally at one point to me says, "Could you just hold your answers to 30 seconds?" And I'm thinking to myself, listen, you son of a bitch, it's my book, but
yeah,
it's all right. So,
man.
All right, brother, we'll talk soon.
Thanks, my man. We'll talk soon. Thank you, buddy. Take care.